Yo, what's up, man? How's it going?
What's happening? How you doing?
Good, good. We're doing episode 3 of our 32-part series on team breakdowns. Today it's the Baltimore Ravens. Pretty excited.
Baltimore.
Right, I got his flame sword.
Baltimore. I'm getting a
A
little
good team. End of video.
yeah, a good team with a really good
A good
quarterback.
Yeah.
I will say, I just want to get this out of the way. I feel like I'm getting a little fatigued with like bird teams. This is the third bird team in a row. Just the way it laid out. We had the we had the Cardinals, we had the Falcons, and now we have the Ravens. Just feels like I need to like segue out of birds for like
That's
the next
real.
one. So
Do you know who the next
too many
one
birds.
is? Who would the next one be? I don't even
I
know.
don't even know. I don't even
Yeah, I
know.
have to
I think
look.
it's the
I'm
I think
trying
it's
to
the
go in order.
Bills.
That would make sense. Buffalo.
Yeah. So
Baltimore,
we're
Buffalo.
on to a new
We're
animal.
we're in
which
the
is
clear.
dope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's real.
So with this team, generally with the way we do these, we always start by kind of recapping last year.
Yeah.
And I think with the last few teams we've done, like the last two we've done, they've both had lackluster seasons. And this one's such a pivot for me because last year we both felt like they were the best team in football. I mean, I did, and I think
Definitely.
you did too, right?
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
Yeah. They finished 13-4, first in the AFC North, which was a good division. Lamar MVP again. They
Big
lost.
trust.
Lamar Jackson in the flesh. Yes, sir. Big trust.
Yep, they lost to Kansas City in the AFC Championship. One thing I loved about last season is moving on from Greg Roman. I thought the offensive coordinator Todd Monken they brought in did a really good job.
Yeah.
With kind of like building on the offense they had, but making it a little more fun and a little more explosive. I feel bad for Baltimore fans because last season, we're Lions fans, and we
Yeah.
went to go play you guys in Baltimore, and it looked like a JV varsity scrimmage.
On offense, for sure. Here, just going to dump it off to Edwards. There's no one in front of him. Gus Edwards running away. Edwards, now one man to beat. Still going all the way down to the 10.
Got our teeth kicked in.
You completely took our lunch
Yeah.
money.
Beat the shit out of us.
Yeah, and it was pretty demoralizing. But I think I felt like at least, okay, if it's not going to be us, this will be the year that Baltimore kind of closes and gets it done. Like they were clear cut the best team for me last season, and that was proven again on Christmas with the San Francisco game. I felt like San Francisco was the other team maybe that I felt like was the best team, and then you guys just panched them, and it was kind of like, all right, this is over. Like, it's Baltimore. But kind of the same story with you guys, no offense. Like, you didn't get it done again. And I don't know. I mean, what do you make of last season? Let's just touch on it and we'll move on, but it's tough, man.
Didn't they beat up Dallas too? Wasn't that another big game they had where they
I don't
I
remember
thought
if they
punched.
even played.
I thought
No, they didn't
punched-
play Dallas,
yeah.
I don't think.
Did they not? Am I thinking of a different year? All right, whatever. Either way, I mean they were the best team in football last year. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I mean we saw Detroit go on a run and be pretty dominant towards the latter half of the season. Obviously they had that huge lead on the Niners, and it looked like they were walking into the Super Bowl. So when you look at the team on the other side, Chiefs Ravens, it's like, oh boy. I just know during that first half as a Lions fan, I'm like, oh man, like thank God the Chiefs won. You know what I mean? Like thank God the Chiefs won. It was a scary moment for a minute, It's like you're watching that game beforehand and you're like, oh man, I don't want to if there's a potential of seeing Lamar again, like it might be one of those like lopsided Seattle Seahawks, Denver Broncos Super Bowl where it was over 4 minutes into the game. You know, it's like they kicked the shit out of us, and they were kicking the shit out of everybody in their way. They were a powerhouse last year.
They were absolute bullies last season.
There wasn't much to say about it, and they bullied in the playoffs too. And then it just it's Pat Mahomes, man. Like he just does what he does.
It just didn't finish.
No.
And it's interesting because I don't think anybody wanted to see them last year, and at the end of the day, it just ended up being another Chiefs Super Bowl, and Baltimore kind of fades into the history books. And if you were there last season watching the games like we were, it just felt like Baltimore's year, and it wasn't again.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
So
Yeah.
we come into this year on kind of a weird note, because how do you really improve from last year? If you didn't make the Super Bowl, I think you and I both agree that last season was the best team rendition version of the Lamar
For
Jackson
sure.
Ravens we've ever seen, right?
Yeah. 100% it was.
It was like the pinnacle of this thing. So trying to move forward and evaluate to this season is a bit tough, but we did our best. I think that we got to get the obvious out of the way. Obviously, they signed Derrick Henry. That was like the big blockbuster, big kind of sparkly off-season sexy move, if you will.
Sure thing.
I like the signing. I don't feel quite as crazy about it as everybody else does. I think just because it's not 2017. But
Yeah.
I do feel like Derek has maybe a couple years left. I mean, he's different. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. I don't give a shit about Gus Bus. I don't care about JK. I'm injured. I'm not playing Dobbins. It's just I don't care about these guys. So the fact that they replaced those two guys with Derrick Henry, I think it's a huge upgrade, and I like it a lot. What are your thoughts on the Henry move? Do you dig it?
I think on paper I dig it, just because, like you said, I mean, I think Derrick Henry's like, I think we're gonna look back in 15, 20 years and be like, oh, Derrick Henry's one of the 10 best to ever play the game. Like, he's really like, he's just put up like such unbelievable numbers. He's just kind of been in, it's Chris Johnson effect, right? It's like, you were stuck in Tennessee, so like nobody really paid attention to you like that, It's almost like he was forgotten about, or not marketed the same way. So I think being in Baltimore, he'll have that kind of like big market year where he's incredibly popular. But I don't know, man. They lost a lot of people on that offensive line. And I think when you have guys like that, I mean, granted, I believe the Titans had the worst offensive line in the league last year, and Derek still did what
pretty well.
Derek did what he does. So it's not that he can't perform behind big offense or young, I should say, offensive lines, or even just not talented offensive lines. He's just getting older. You know what I mean? Like he's kind of hitting that area where if he goes out there and he's not good this year, it looks like he lost a step and maybe only gets 800 yards, something in that range, I wouldn't be surprised. It wouldn't shock me. I wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, like Derrick Henry's fallen off. It's like, yeah, he's like 30 now,
Yeah, he's actually already like past that age where most running backs like start to fall off a cliff.
That's what I mean.
So he's kind of dancing with the devil now. And it's interesting because I think Baltimore gets sort of swept under the rug. I feel like as a really good team, it is like this really high level organization with this really high level quarterback. And I still feel like the mainstream doesn't really discuss them enough. Like they were the best team last year. Like I feel like that boat sailing into the bridge got more coverage than this team's gotten off season.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's real.
When I think of Baltimore, I don't even think of the Ravens. I just think of that fucking boat like hitting the bridge, and it's just like, geez, that was a nightmare.
No, that's facts.
You know what I mean? But what's funny about it is like, this move actually got like a ton of coverage and a ton of press.
Yeah, tons.
But you and I kind of had the same sort of, I don't want to say light bulb. Yeah, I mean, kind of aha moment, epiphany with our research on this team and kind of doing our homework, if you will, on what this team did this offseason and where it's going, what direction this team's headed in. And what's funny is I do like the Derrick Henry signing. I don't love it. I like it, but I actually think. Yeah.
I was just objectively speaking, it's a good signing. Like he's a very good running back. And like you said, coming from these like injury prone J.K. Dobbins, like Gus Edwards, go let Jim Harbaugh take care of those guys. It's just guys. Yeah. No, it's an objectively good signing. Yeah. But continue.
But I mean, you're absolutely right. I think the thing that was interesting for both of us is we ended up arriving to this destination of thinking like this team, despite the Derrick Henry signing, like actually quietly lost free agency, like in a pretty big way.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that I'm not seeing anybody touching on. I heard you kind of just gloss over it, but I want you to elaborate a little bit because I noticed the same thing you did, and I feel like when you're a team with a good unit in a win now position
Yeah.
and a star quarterback, losing
Yeah.
3 offensive linemen starters, one of
Yeah.
which was a Pro Bowler, is a fatty L, and I've not seen anybody
Yeah.
discuss this, but that's what happened this offseason.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
they lost. Let me pull up my notes real fast just so I don't get the names wrong. But
Yeah.
anytime you lose, because like let's be honest, the Ravens had a really good offensive line last year. It's
Yeah.
what made Lamar, have that comfortability in the pocket. I think it's so much of why he won the MVP is because like he had a lot of protection around him, and it was shown in games, right? Like, man, he could sit back and he could wait for Andrews to get open, wait for Flowers to get open, and if he couldn't,
Yep.
man, he had all the time in the world to figure out where the hell he was going to go. And
Right.
when Lamar's protection, when Lamar can do those type of things, like he's one of the best quarterbacks I've ever seen. Like I'm so Lamar fan, and I want to see him succeed so badly. And I do have to ask the question of like, why would you allow this top unit offensive line to go away? You know what I mean?
It's
to me,
mind-boggling.
it doesn't add up to me. It doesn't really make a ton of sense as to why you let 3 guys walk and then you didn't really replace those guys. You drafted a kid. You drafted a kid, Roger Garden, I think is how you say, Rose Garden. You took him in the second round out of Washington. Washington objectively had a very good unit last year.
Right.
Went to the national championship. Went against a Michigan D line that's pretty much a pro system, which we'll talk on a little later. But
Yeah.
that's a good signing. But then you have Ben Cleveland is your new guard, I believe, and he was a 3rd round pick in 2021. He started 7 games, and then you have Andrew Voorhees, who's a 7th round pick from 23, who's never played.
Right.
But you have Ronnie Stanley and you have Tyler Lindenbaum, so that's not to be ignored. Those, like, you have your center and your left tackle; those are probably the 2 most important pieces.
Yeah, and Ronnie restructured his contract, which was good.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good move for them this offseason. So they've now they've at least locked down their left tackle, because that would have been a nightmare losing anything else. Yeah.
No, it would have been such a nightmare. So when I look at great offensive lines, you want a great center and you want a great left tackle. So they do have the 2 most important positions locked down, but the other 3 are just question marks, and I don't love that for a team that is very much in a Super Bowl window. You cannot. This game is won in the trenches. That has been proven time and time again. You win this game in the trenches with your D line and your O line. If you start there and you build out, it is a winning formula. We've seen it forever. So
Right.
I don't know. I think this line is a huge question mark, and they're going to be tested like very quickly.
Especially
those
in that
first couple
division.
of in that division, but even the first couple of weeks, like you have to see the Chiefs, the Raiders, the Cowboys, and the Bills in the first 4 weeks. Those are all 4 great defensive lines. You know what I mean? Even the Raiders, like,
Yeah. Well, it's interesting.
we'll very quickly find out what they are.
Yeah, and there's a chance that they bounce back, but it's interesting, right? We, in Philadelphia, we talk so much about Jason Kelsey retiring, and that's one center.
Yeah.
But imagine if they lost Jason Kelsey and a starting guard and also their right tackle.
Yeah.
We would be like, what is this Philly offensive line, right? And what's interesting
we would be
is
questioning it severely.
right, and this was a huge part of what made them what oiled the machine last year was this unit.
100%.
And I think the fact that now that's no longer on the table as a surefire thing, I think raises major question marks that I'm not seeing anybody talk about. Frankly, I would have rather kept a mediocre running back like Gus Bus and those linemen versus Derrick Henry at the
100%.
end. And none of those linemen. But
Well,
I'm talking about how this is the move that's going to set them over the edge with Derrick Henry. And it's like,
Yeah.
well, I would have agreed with you if they would have kept this line, but they lost 3 starters. That's nuts. And 2 of them are on the Jets.
Yeah, I don't understand what that's about, but
It's just an interesting
One of
turn
them-
of events.
one of the Pro Bowlers went to the Lions, so it ain't all bad.
Zeitler. Yeah,
it
we love
ain't
that
all
guy.
bad.
Welcome to
Shout
Detroit,
out,
buddy
shout out
boy.
Kevin Zeitler, baby.
One man's trash is another man's treasure, my friend.
A dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's
yeah.
real.
And it's interesting too because kind of on the theme of like this team sort of taking an L in free agency, like the quietest L in free agency that we've ever really seen, but like an L
Yeah.
nonetheless, in my opinion. They
Yeah.
also lost Patrick Queen and Geno Stone.
Mm-hmm.
And not only did they lose Patrick Queen and Geno Stone, who were two massive contributors for them last year, they lost Patrick Queen to Pittsburgh, who is your division competitor and has also been looking for an interior linebacker to fill that role as like the guy, the helmet on the sticker, the interior linebacker since Ryan Shazier like died. So they've been looking for this guy, for years, and I think they have it now. Honestly, like I know Patrick Queen's not a superstar, but he's a damn good player. And Geno Stone is, because I think of how good Kyle Hamilton is, it overshadows other players in the secondary. And Geno Stone led the team in interceptions last season. Geno Stone had like a very, very objectively very good season with Baltimore last year, and now he's in Cincinnati. So now
Man,
Lamar
you hate that.
has to see the team leader in interceptions in the Bengals uniform twice a year, and one of their leading tacklers in a Pittsburgh uniform twice a year. And look, at linebacker they have Roquan Smith. He's better than Patrick Queen. I get it. At safety they have Hamilton. He's better than Stone. I get it. But like part of what made them special last year was having guys fucking everywhere, where it was like, the quarterback seeing ghosts. It's like, all right, I got to throw away from Hamilton. Oh shit, this guy like picked me off twice in this game. Like,
right.
You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, like we identified the mic. There's Roquan. All right, like we're running away from Roquan, and it's like, well, Patrick Queen's also going to make plays on you, and like now it's almost a situation of, well, Roquan and Hamilton have to be stars every week now, or else, you know what I mean? Like you're just putting more on the plate, and I think those guys can handle it. But these are losses nonetheless that I'm not really seeing anybody discuss, especially when their defensive depth and their defensive, like the layer of their defense, layer on top of layer on top of guy on top of guy, is now been minimized by two key starters. It's like, I don't know, man. Like it feels like a loss to me in free agency. Like 3 offensive lineman starters and 2 key defensive contributors. I don't think Derrick Henry at 31 makes up for that. I'm sorry, I don't.
No, he doesn't, and it's kind of like putting the cart before the horse, right? It's like, well, we got this really nice running back, and it's like, okay, but you used the money to not pay your linemen,
your guards, You can
have anybody back there if you have great guards. You can have anybody back there if you have a franchise right tackle, but you let those guys walk
right.
And I do think that line in particular was a huge reason they lost that Chiefs game. The line definitely had a really bad game. So maybe it was just one of those things where it was like, you know what, when it mattered most, you guys kind of pooped the bed.
Yeah, get out of my building.
We're okay moving on from you guys. Like and it could be like, that's what I mean. It could be like a mental game, right? It's like, you guys, like, it didn't work out, so we're gonna retool this thing. Almost like when the Bucks just killed the Chiefs in that Super Bowl a few years ago.
Yeah, and they moved
Andy
on
Reid,
from their 2 tackles.
Andy Reid like retooled within one off season to get that. So it like I said, it absolutely could work out. I just look at the resumes of these guys, and I'm like, ew.
Maybe.
I don't like that, man.
I think it was a different situation, and I think when we talk about like Andy Reid, Sean McVay, it's like they're in a class of their own in terms of figuring this type of stuff out, especially Andy. And this is a different situation. I don't know, but you're right. I mean, they didn't play well in the AFC Championship game, but I want to segue into kind of like who's on the team still from last season, because I feel like what's so interesting is depending on who you are, you have Lamar Jackson as the number 2 quarterback in football, or the number, no farther than 5. So he's somewhere in there. For me, he's
3, really.
He's 4. I just a little bit. I like Joe Shiesty just a bit more than him.
Sure.
But if you want to say that, you think Lamar is better than Josh Allen and Joe Burrow, like I can't hold you. That's
it's not crazy.
It speaks for itself, right?
Yeah.
He's the best athlete we've ever seen at quarterback, like bar none. It's the second guy is like Vic, and Vic has not had nearly the career at this point that Lamar's had.
Lamar's so much better than Vic.
He's so much better than Vic. He's in a class of his own.
Yeah.
And so
100%.
It's interesting seeing him have another MVP season, and I'm thinking about it. in terms of the offensive thing, bringing Derrick Henry in is good. But there's some guys on this team that I feel like if this team's going to survive and like actually make a real push again, which they made a push last year, just didn't finish.
Yeah.
I was thinking a lot about sort of like who on offense to me is lacking. And the answer really is Mark Andrews, because he's been on a fucking injury tour for the last 3 seasons.
Yeah.
And I would
That's
even argue that
facts.
a healthy Mark Andrews might have been the difference in that game against Kansas City. He's such
It
a
could have been.
security blanket for Lamar.
Yeah.
But the reality is the reality. Like, I feel like Baltimore has to move forward now as almost as if Mark's going to get hurt. And I don't wish injury on anybody. I hate seeing it, but he's been hurt a lot the last few years. And
Yeah.
when I'm really like extrapolating, out for the season, like guys that I feel like have to take a huge step, it's Isaiah Likely at tight end, and it's Zay Flowers at wide receiver. Isaiah Likely filled in for Mark Andrews last year and appears to be like a very dynamic tight end. I think this year I would like to see him almost be like a 1-2 tight end punch with Mark Andrews, instead of just like, I'm going to sit on the sidelines until Mark inevitably gets hurt, so they can limit Andrews' usage. So maybe he can stay healthy this year. So when they get to the playoffs, they have Mark Andrews, because he's not getting 19 targets a game from Lamar Jackson. They can use Likely. He's fast. He's quick. He's got really good hands. He's almost like a big wide receiver. But he's not as good as Andrews. But he's like he could start on a lot of teams. And then there's also Zay Flowers, which for me, the knock on him is that he's a 5'9" speed receiver, right?
Sure.
He had 858 yards, 5 touchdowns, 77 catches last season. Like a really good rookie season. Not amazing, but the team loses Odell Beckham, which I don't care, but you guys do. And Rashad Bateman is a nothing burger to me. Like, he's had, it's like years to prove it. We're not proved.
Yeah,
it's kind of, you know what I mean?
Good.
Like,
He's not
you've
good.
had years to spit in our faces with the narrative that you're not a good receiver and you've done nothing. Like, I'm out on Bateman. So it kind of leaves Flowers on this island of like, look, you're not going to like, he's a 5'9" speed guy. He's not going to beat Tyreek Hill, right? Nobody's Tyreek Hill. But can you be upper middle class Tyreek Hill instead of Ferrari? Can you be Mercedes-Benz Tyreek Hill instead of Ferrari Tyreek Hill? You know what I mean? Like, can you take that step this year of truly being a number one receiver, even if it's not a high-end one? Can you be a real one? Can you have over 1,000 yards? Can you have 7 or 8 touchdowns? Can you have, 95 catches instead of 77? Like, can you make that leap this season with this team? Because I think if he can, and I think if Likely can, and I think if Andrews can stay healthy, I think that this team has enough juice on offense with one of the best, most dynamic quarterbacks we've ever seen touch a football to make another push. But I need those guys to be a whole tier above essentially where they were last season, which was good, but I need those guys to take steps forward. And then one more guy offensively I did want to touch on was Keaton Mitchell. I watched Keaton a lot last season. I really, really liked his game. He came from a small school. He was a late-round running back draft pick for Baltimore last year, and he really provided a lot of like pass-catching, elusiveness, speed, change of pace, kind of big play upside for them. But he tore his ACL. ACLs are tricky. You never know. It's not quite an Achilles. If you get an Achilles as a running back, you're probably cooked. ACLs you can come back from, and he's very young. So I hope that he can, because I just think that they're going to need a little bit of sizzle with the stake of Derrick Henry at this point in his career.
Sure.
I don't think you can hand the ball off to Henry 25 times a game and hope that it's going to work. You need a guy like Keaton Mitchell to come in and get, 9 carries and 4 catches to like lighten the load for Derrick Henry. So I really hope, like, I know Ravens fans know who I'm talking about. I hope that Keaton Mitchell comes back and can make a difference, but really, Zay Flowers specifically, I think, needs to step up and be a star this year.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I'm going to talk less about the offense, defense, and I want to kind of like pull the curtain back and like come at it from a bird's eye view a little bit.
Sure.
This team is starting, like, I look at this team and I look at this team every, the last couple of years, and I can't put my finger on it. Like, who do they remind me of? Who does this team remind me of? I feel like I've watched this all play out before. And who is it? Who is it? Who is it? And I just realized who it was. And this is starting to really remind me. I guess I should say that the John Harbaugh, Lamar Jackson era in Baltimore is starting to really reflect the Matt LaFleur, Aaron Rodgers era in Green Bay.
So
they
true.
Seem like every year you have this MVP quarterback who is just so dynamic, who wins the division, like is pretty much like a cakewalk into the AFC Championship, or I'm sorry, NFC Championship in the Packers case, and then just falls short when it push comes to shove. And you just keep wondering, like, when is this team going to get over the hump? When is this team going to get over the hump? And the more times that it happens, the more times you're like, man, like this.
Maybe never.
I don't think this is going to happen. And I'm not saying that the Ravens right now, just for the record. The Ravens obviously just got to their first AFC Championship last year, so I do think they can make a push in the years to come. But you know, I was taking a look because I feel like the narrative with those two teams. I know what the narrative was in Green Bay for years, which is like, oh, they don't use first round talent, or they don't use even high end talent on Rodgers. They don't get him talent. They don't get him weapons. They don't help on the offense. They only take defense. And then I'm kind of hearing that on the Ravens side too, you know, especially like Zay Flowers. Zay Flowers was kind of like the fine here pick, like shut up and you know, like here we got him a first round pick, but it wasn't. I mean, I feel like even because Rashad Bateman was a first round pick, I feel like everybody just went back to the narrative when they saw that he wasn't very good, right? No. Everybody's just like, oh, why can't you get a star wide receiver for Lamar? And it's like, well, I mean, we tried. Rashad Bateman's just like not that good.
I think there's more to it than that. I think that's one knock on Lamar that might be a bit true, and I think that sometimes he does struggle. And I think Greg Roman being the OC for years was part of this to elevate wide receivers because they have brought in a lot of talent. They have.
Yeah,
like
totally agree.
They objectively have. And they've drafted well, too. Just, you know,
they've drafted very well. I mean, but you know, most teams miss on a couple of guys. That's just the reality of it, you know. But typically when you miss on a guy, you hit on a guy later in the rounds. You know, you usually walk away from the draft with serviceable players at the very least, especially if you're a franchise like Baltimore. You know, I mean, that's
well
one
run.
of the best franchises. So well run. I mean, incredibly well run. So yeah, to me, it's interesting. I feel like I'm starting to get the Aaron Rodgers Green Bay vibes when it comes to Baltimore, and I don't know what that means for this year. I mean, obviously we touched on the offensive line struggles. We touched on the defensive losses. I do want to talk a little bit about the biggest loss on defense, if you will, and that's Mike McDaniel. I think Mike McDaniel is. I kind of look at him as like the defensive Sean McVay. I think he's like just this wonder boy. Basically, he's like 36 years old. Yeah. He's now a head coach of a franchise that is known for its amazing defenses in the past.
Helped turn Michigan around.
I was gonna say he did. Not only did he build like a Super Bowl caliber defense for Baltimore, but he set the foundation for national championship winning defense at Michigan. You know, he was in there before Jesse Minter came in after him, and Jesse Minter's a disciple of Mike McDaniel. Like he was learning under him when they were both in Baltimore, and
Seattle got a good one.
Yeah, they both spent time at Michigan, and Mike McDaniel was the one who really switched that defense up.
You know, I said it like 4 times, so why didn't you say it the first time I said Aaron?
Because it's pronounced Aaron?
Son of a bitch!
To start playing like a pro, like an NFL defense. And it showed last year when they absolutely obliterated everybody down the stretch. And that goes for the Ravens too. I mean, you know, I hate to just keep going back to it, but it's what I know. Detroit was a top 5 offense, and they completely manhandled them. Like we couldn't get shit going against the Ravens.
And
like,
they manhandled San Francisco too, if we're being honest. It's not to an extreme level as Detroit, but they also completely took the lunch money from San Francisco.
Yeah. So you're replacing Mike McDaniel with a defensive coordinator from in-house, Zach Orr. He's your linebackers. He was your linebackers coach beforehand. He was a linebacker coach for Jacksonville, I believe 2 years prior. So it's not that he doesn't have experience. It's just like, is he Mike McDaniel? And my guess would be no. But I don't know that for a fact. You know what I mean? He could be a wonder boy as well. I have no idea, but I do think that this defense is going to regress a little bit with that loss. I think it's a mega loss for them. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously being a Michigan fan, I've seen what he can do as a defensive coordinator.
Absolutely.
And I think just to sum up everything you said, honestly, it's an amazing point. And I think hearkening back to the Rodgers LaFleur era is interesting. I'll give you a more contemporary team, the San Francisco 49ers under Shanahan. It feels I look at this team and I look at last season, and I mean, you and I were talking about this in our pre-production process of kind of some ideas we had and what we were looking at. And I said to you, I asked you the question, and I'll put it on here.
Sure.
Why is this team never my pick? Why is this team never my pick?
For the reason we just said. I feel like there's a vibe there that's just like, can we get it done?
And they get a pass, right? Like Buffalo doesn't. It's Buffalo, but Buffalo gets cooked by the mainstream media all the time now as this thing, because they all look stupid, right? And you know how vengeful these people are. They go on TV, they make this. They get paid millions of dollars to make these big declarations of who's going to win. Oh, pencil it in. Some moron, bets his mortgage on the Bills.
Not gambling anymore. I'm broke. Jesus Christ. I screwed up, Vic. I screwed up really bad this time.
And they don't win, and they get hate mail, and they're like, well, So then they turn on Buffalo as the years go on, and it's like, I'm not buying this team. They're a bunch of frauds. They never win it. And it's like, I feel the same way about Baltimore. Like every year I believe in Lamar. Every year I believe John Harbaugh has a Super Bowl. I believe in John Harbaugh. Every year this defense is good. It's just always like, well, why can't I take the dollars in my bank account and just go put it on you? I never can. And it's what you touched on. It's just, even last year, it was like they were just the clear-cut best team in football. And it's like, are they going to win the Super Bowl this year? And we both were like, they're not my pick. And it's like, how are they not our pick? How are they not our pick? I'm watching this team be the best team in football, bar none. And it's something you touched on. And every year that it happens, it becomes more and more cosmic. And that's my fear. My fear is the mental part. And I understand everyone's gonna be like, this is so woo-woo bullshit.
Yeah.
The more times that and just like Buffalo, so I'll make two examples out of it so you don't feel personally attacked as Raven fans.
Sure.
Every year that you have this good team and this great quarterback, and you just about get there but don't, it's another year of the doubt. It's another year of, can we do it? It's another tight playoff game. You're waiting for the ball to get snapped and your fingers are shaking instead of just being relaxed. And it's like the mental edge that Patrick Mahomes has over these guys now is insane.
I am inevitable.
Oh, man.
And it just worries me as for Baltimore fans because of how dynamic and elite this quarterback is and how special this, and your head coach is a fucking gem as well. I love John Harbaugh. But it's just every year you don't get it done. And I'm with you. I look at the free agency this year. I look at the loss of the defensive coordinator, and one that you and I love. And it's just like, they're not my pick.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't elaborate.
No, I feel you.
They're just not my pick. And it's the same story. Since 2018, it's the same story.
Yeah, it's giving Oklahoma City Thunder with Kevin Durant. It's kind of like
so true.
It's kind of just like
won't be though.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah. But you're gonna run into Tim Duncan, or you're gonna run into Stephen Curry. It's just like, you're not ever the guy.
Right. Right.
You got to go join the guy. But man, I don't know. It's so hard because, like, as a, obviously I want to see my team win the Super Bowl every year. But like, if somebody said, hey, I saw the future, it ain't gonna be the Lions. Who would you want to win it? It's like Lamar would be probably the top of my list. Like, he's such a fun quarterback. I'm kind of tired of hearing about it's his fault in those games. Like, it's not always his fault. I watched every second of that AFC Championship game. Like, that line let him down. That defense let him down. Like, I don't know.
Flowers had that stupid play. Yeah, I mean,
Flowers had that dumb fumble on the one. It's like,
that was so stupid.
I don't know. He didn't have a bad game, and you know,
there's
the whole
something up here. It's a team thing now, where it's like,
it is a
okay,
team. I agree.
We're here, but like, are we better than Kansas? And it's like, I just feel like they go
No,
into
you're not.
every year. I feel like it's not just Lamar, but it is Lamar too. It's the whole team. I feel like they go into these big playoff games just tight.
Sure.
Every year.
Yeah.
But I want to segue a little bit into something else, because we always try to come up with an X factor this year, just a player that we're keeping an eye out for, a player that we feel like needs to have a big season. This year I put Nate Wiggins, and it's for a lot of the reasons that we just touched on.
Sure.
Obviously, you know, losing a high-level safety, losing a linebacker. I just don't buy that Marlon Humphrey is still elite, frankly. I'm not so sure. So
He's not.
yeah, so the Ravens took this guy Nate Wiggins out of Clemson. He's 6'1", kind of looks more 6'2". He's long, he's lean. He's got that Ravens kind of physical
Yes, he does.
length, sort of almost like basketball player playing DB, Sauce Gardner style thing that they just keep finding these guys every year and every year. You and I are Lions fans. We both kind of had him projected to be our pick because we didn't know we were going to trade up for Terrion, but
Yeah.
so I would have been happy with this guy. I wrote down that I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being the best defensive back out of this draft class. And I know you
He
like
was my
him
number
too.
one. He was my number one, even with Terrion Arnold. He was my number one. Terrion was my number two. Not that I'm some crazy cornerback expert, but man, I just watched. I look at the RAS scores a lot. I watch at least some game tape, especially when it's like he's in the area of maybe where my team will pick him, especially at a need like the Lions had. I watched a lot of Clemson highlights, and man, he's fucking freaky good.
He pops
like he's
off
an
the
alien,
screen.
right? He's like an alien. He's like 6'1" or whatever he is, and he's got this second gear speed that's just like it's unbelievable. There's this play, I think it was
They need him to be like pretty immediate, I think, because
yeah.
I'm worried about this defense taking a step back, but they can be where they were last season if this guy's as good, you know, as I think he is, because he's like one of the few DBs that like pops off the screen, like back in the day when like, you know, like Ed Reed and Bob Sanders were playing, and you'd be like, whoa, what was that? Troy Polamalu, you know, he's got that like you see him as a DB even away from the ball sometimes watching Clemson. It's nuts.
Yep.
But who's your X factor this year?
I touched on it earlier, but I think it plain and simple, it's the offensive line. I think this offensive line is absolutely make or break for this team. You know, you cannot have a successful offense with a mediocre offensive line. Those guys have to step up. There's just really no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Especially Rose Garden. I mean, Rose Garden, you're expected. You were used as high draft capital. You know, second round pick. You gotta step in and be a day one starter, and you have to be very good. Unfortunately, I don't make the rules, dude. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
well, the good
to.
news for him is raw. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I think I was gonna say what you were gonna say, but basically, like, you're going into a room with Ronnie Stanley, and you're going into a room with Tyler Lindenbaum, and those guys are both Pro Bowlers. They're both vets who are very, very, very well respected. So it's a great tandem to learn next to and really like lock in with. The guards are iffy. The guards are very, very iffy in my opinion.
To say the least.
And you have to just.
Yep.
I don't know.
Got to deliver earlier than you were supposed to, I think. But the good news is his name is Roger Rosengarten, which is a really cool name. So I kind of like him already.
Roger Rosengarten.
And before we get to our final kind of verdict on where we kind of what we want to put on the line on tape, just give me a kind of an offhanded bold prediction that you had, and also give me the record. Just wrap it up.
Okay, so my bold prediction was, obviously we have the schedules now. Those dropped the other day, so we can we get a little more context to how this season looks. And again, I said it earlier, but your first 4 weeks are the Chiefs, Raiders, Cowboys, Bills. That's a rough first 4 weeks, bro. That's really rough. And I'm seeing a lot of people saying, "Oh, it's super possible that they're 1-3." I don't foresee that, but I do think, and it might be a bit of an overreaction, but I do think those first 4 weeks are the most important 4 weeks in the season. When you're coming off of a loss like that, especially after a season like that where you were so dominant, to keep that momentum going into this season, I mean, you're starting off with a rematch of that game on Thursday night to kick off the season. If you can go and kick the Chiefs in the teeth, that's going to buy you even if you lose the next 3 games, right. Kicking the Chiefs in the teeth, I mean, that's going to buy you a little bit of runway. But if you can go out there and you can not only beat the Chiefs, but then beat the Raiders and beat the Bills and beat the Cowboys, I mean, that train's rolling, right? You're right back where you started. Now. You're playing with house money. You're right back where you started off. You got three of your hardest games of the season out of the way. You know, you're obviously you play in that division, so it is what it is. You got to see the Browns defense twice a year. You have to see the Bengals twice a year, and you have to see the Steelers twice a year. So you're gonna have tough opponents, but to me, I just look at that first. You know, I think there's like I don't never remember what the exact number is, but I think it's like if you start 0-2, you have like a vast like you have like a 26% chance of making the playoffs at that point.
Unless you're the Bengals.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, there's still 26%. But
yeah,
I feel like the first 4 weeks for them are going to be incredibly important. You get the Raiders in there, that should be a dub, but that's no joke of a defense. I like you better than the Cowboys. I think that's a win. I think the only one I look at that I'm like that's probably a loss is the Chiefs Thursday night. But I mean, the Chiefs have had a noisy offseason thus far. I don't know. You know,
never know.
You could win that game. I mean, you know, weirder things have happened. So the first 4 weeks of the year, those are going to be your most important, in my opinion. I foresee you going 3-1 in that stretch, and I see this team being 12-5, 13-4, whichever one you want to take it. I think you should win the division. You have, I think this year and next year are your Super Bowl years, and you should be looking at the outlook of the season saying, it's Super Bowl or bust, and it very well could be. It very well could be. They're a very good team, and I'm excited to watch them play yet again this year. But yeah, what? How about you? What do you think? What do you think as far as a bold prediction and record and all that?
No, I love that. I think for me, I just narrowed it down to the fact that my bold prediction is essentially just I think Zay Flowers is going to be a Pro Bowler next season. Okay. I just like what Todd Monken is doing with this offense in terms of generating explosive plays that they were really missing under Greg Roman. Mm-hmm. I think you can use him in screens. I think you can use him on deep routes. I think you can use him in motion. I think you can disguise him. He's small. He's elusive. He's fast. He doesn't have the big body size to be a true possession one receiver. But in today's NFL, I'm not sure you need it. I think you can get away with speed and you can get away with elusiveness. He's really special with the ball in his hands. So I think that if this team's going to, I got touched on earlier, move forward, I think Lamar has to have a new guy not named Mark Andrews that he can look at and go, okay, I'm giving you the ball, like, go do us something. I can't run right now. I'm fucking tired. Like, can you make a play? I think Zay is going to be that guy, man. I liked what I saw from his rookie season. He had some shit going on this offseason, so maybe I'm wrong there, but I'm just making that my bold prediction because I like this guy's game a lot.
Sure.
I have him going 12-5. I think they will win the division. I think the division is going to be close. I think it's going to be competitive. I think for me, where I kind of can't get as excited as I want to is I don't know that I see them going all the way this year. It felt to me like last year was just the serendipitous best. It was the best version of the Lamar John Harbaugh era that we've seen, and it was right there, and it didn't finish. And it's like, I'm not taking you guys again. And I'm sorry to like Ravens fans to if I'm a Ravens fan, I'm pumped about this season. I'm pumped about this team, and I have you going 12-5 and winning the division. With some of these teams, I'm going to feel comfortable being like, you know what? F it. I'm going Super Bowl. I'm going, and I don't this year. I felt like last year it was right there. That was the team. And, maybe Mark Andrews getting hurt was the difference. I don't know. but you didn't do it again. And I don't view this team as better than it was last season. I'm sorry. So 12-5, really good regular season. I think Lamar will have another dynamic, incredible season. I like Zay Flowers. I'm excited about these pieces. Derrick Henry's a big name, but I can't go all the way. So that's my take on them.
That's fair. I mean, it's fair. They haven't proven that they can go all the way. It's not even like they have Super Bowl losses. They just keep getting bounced in the playoffs. So
yep.
Yeah, I mean, hey, I get it, man. It's not a crazy take. I know Ravens fans probably won't love it, but you know, sometimes you gotta hear the truth.
Yep. But leave a comment, get after us about it. Let us know if you feel like if they're your Super Bowl pick, tell us why. I got no problem. I think honestly, I get why a lot of people would pick them. I'm just going.
Good.
So I want to say thank you guys so much for watching this. If you made it this far,
yes, sir.
Please comment, like, subscribe, and we'll be back next week with a brand new episode for you guys, or later this week maybe.
Peace.
All right. Peace. Thank you.